I was on your website a number of times through the years. I'd say it was probably after my first child was born. I became pretty nervous about flying. I never really had that issue prior,
Yeah.
and I and it continued to get worse and worse. And so it got to a point to where I would um, I would take some prescription medication to relax me, and but I would get so uptight, not just the days before, but it would get increasingly worse as I entered the airport, as I checked in, walked through the terminal, and got to my gate and arrived at my seat on the plane. And I honestly, I was not happy living that way and being so limited in regards to not traveling. And my wife loves to travel. She would love to travel more. And I wanted to do something about it. So I visited your website and I would read some things and to see if that could help me. And then a good friend bought um, uh, a subscription or a pass to view more material on the website and an opportunity to speak with you, and that was tremendously helpful. But I want to tell you, when I had been on your site years before, and I attempted the 5 4 3 2 1
Uh-huh.
method,
Yeah.
honestly, I didn't really, and this is. I just want to be very direct about this. It,
Yeah.
it was difficult for me to the point to where it did not work at all. But it wasn't the program; it was me. And so,
Well, the 5 4 3 2 1 is kind of a band-aid. It's something you can learn easily, and it's a way of kind of distracting yourself.
mhm,
So you see, the amygdala, the part of the brain that releases stress hormones, it it
mhm.
it will do it on a knee-jerk basis, no matter whether you're distracted or not. So if the amygdala's not too active, you can distract yourself with that. But if you get in turbulence and the plane drops,
Mhm,
that's not gonna help.
mhm, mhm. And but here's what I noticed about so the 5 4 3 2 1 method allowed me to be a little more open minded about meditation, for
Yeah,
example.
yeah,
And so I practiced it rather than days before a trip. I realized that I needed to practice it uh, regularly in order for it to really make a difference. And so I started to. And so um, I've applied it. So, and this is honestly why I wanted to take this opportunity to discuss this, is because it has actually helped me in other areas of my life as well.
yeah.
And so I flew in July with my daughter. It was just my daughter and I. We took a trip to New York, and that was the first time. So this is July 2019, and this was the first time since 2001 that I flew without any medication.
Great. Okay.
And yeah, and so um, I even forgot to take my medication, which had become so routine.
Yeah.
And I was sitting on the plane, and I was like, "Oh, I forgot." And um, and I immediately I just started doing the 5 4 3 2 1, and like I said, it's become routine for me. So I'm either doing 5 4 3 2 1 or I'm meditating daily.
Okay.
And
Well, the other thing that we do in the program is more effective, and that is, if you think about your car, maybe it's a good example. When
mm,
you push on the accelerator pedal, the car goes faster.
mhm,
We have a part of the brain called the amygdala. It releases stress hormones when the, when it senses there might be a danger where we need to get revved up and deal with it, either by running away or fighting. So it gives us more gas into our engine. Now,
mhm,
but on the other hand, at times we need to slow down. So you got a
mhm,
braking system. And the thing is that we have this system that revs us up like the accelerator pedal. We have this system that slows us down like the brake pedal. Now, when a child is born, no problem with that accelerator pedal, but the brake system is not developed yet. I mean, well, it's there, but it can't, the child doesn't know how to make it work.
mhm,
Uh, so what happens is, as a parent, whether you're the mom or dad, when the baby's upset, what you're likely going to do is intuitively activate the baby's calming system. And
Mhm.
you do that with your face, mostly your attention and your soft eyes and loving look, and not judgmental, just there to try to connect with the baby.
Mhm.
That helps activate the calming system. The second thing that helps activate the calming system is the quality of your voice. And even a newborn, we talk English to the baby if we're English speaking.
Mhm.
Baby doesn't understand those words, but the quality of the voice has an effect on activating the brake pedal.
Mhm.
Then the third thing is touch. And from dealing with your kids that this is really important, being, holding the baby or jiggling the baby or rocking the baby or stroking the baby. That physical touch activates the calming system. So there's your
Mhm.
three things: your face, your voice quality, and your physical contact with the child. So
Mhm.
this goes on for quite a long time, maybe a year and a half or so. And at, at this point, at around a year and a half, the child has reached the point where, when upset, can expect that mom, let's say, or dad is going to show up. And assuming mom is in a different room. So as the child gets upset and expects mom going to be here in a minute, starts imagining her arrival
Mhm.
and imagining hearing her come around the corner and saying, honey, what's the matter? And come over and pick him up. So those three things being imagined, the imagination will activate the calming system. So if mom does in fact come around and say, honey, what's wrong with you? Are you okay? But this time the baby's going to look okay. It might not
Mhm.
seem to make sense that she actually needs to do anything. And that probably is why some of us don't get what we need. Mom says, hey, you're fine. I'm just walking away. I'm busy. But if
Mhm.
mom comes in and does look at the baby, the face activates the calming system, the brake pedal, talks to the baby in a loving way. Voice quality activates the calming system and picks up the baby and gives them a hug. So
Mhm.
what the child's expectation did was activate the calming system, and then mom follows through, and that cements it. And that's
Mhm.
how we build in our ability to activate the calming system. But you can see what could happen is mom shows up, says, hey, you're fine. You don't need me. I'm busy. Goodbye. And so
Mhm.
it doesn't get
Mhm.
activated. So what we're doing in the SOAR program, one of the things we're doing is looking for a person in your adult life who has a calming effect on you. And then
Mhm.
we want to go through an exercise where we link that person's calming face, voice, and touch to the airplane situation, such as you imagine that you're with that person and they have a
Mhm.
photograph of a flight attendant closing the door by their face. Then
Mhm.
you talk with your friend about that situation, and then you get a hug. So face,
Right.
voice, and touch gets connected with the door closing. And then you want to do the same thing with taxiing out and takeoff and cruise and turbulence and all those other things. So that when you're in those challenging situations, just like the baby getting upset and expecting mom to show up, when you're in those challenging situations, this person's face, voice, and touch pops in to the mind unconsciously and activates your
Mhm.
calming system. So it's really
Mhm.
neat.
Mhm.
Did you try any of that yet, or did you
You
know
know
about
what?
it?
I'm glad that you mentioned that. That I did. I tried that when I was attempting to fly in 2000, March of 2018. I mentioned that to you before, just relative to that flight. Unfortunately, I was unable to take that trip because of some mechanical issues on the
Yeah.
plane. But I got on that flight absolutely fine because I did the 5 4 3 2 1. The mechanical issue popped up. I continued with the 5 4 3 2 1, and then I remembered to think of a face of an individual or
Uh-huh.
people that
Uh-huh.
makes you comfortable. And I
Yeah.
had some pictures on my phone, and I looked at those pictures while some of this stuff was going on, and I really did. The explanation that you give in the program and in the material that you've written um, is a huge help. And I think that people like me that have this angst relative to
Yeah.
flying is it's not just providing the information, but also explaining why it works. And I think you've done a tremendous job with that. That actually settles my mind quite a
Well,
bit.
if you go back to that idea of the child getting upset, imagining mom's arrival, and then mom shows up and reinforces it, if that happens enough times and it
Hmm.
gets built in, then the child
Hmm.
just has this automatic system that every time it
Hmm.
gets revved up, thinks of mom, gets calmed down, and after a while, he's not even actively thinking of mom. He just gets revved
Right.
up, gets calmed down. It's kind of like your cell phone. When your cell phone rings and you answer it, it automatically stops ringing.
Hmm.
So for a person who has this, who's fortunate enough to build in this automatic calming, every
Hmm.
time you get upset, it grabs your attention, but immediately you calm down so you can take a good look at it and see if everything's okay, or if you really need to do something.
Hmm.
On the other hand, if you don't have this automatic calming, then you have to do something like the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to calm down, or you
Yeah.
have to be in control, or have to be able to escape. Because when you get a shot of stress hormones from the amygdala, because it's picked up something,
Hmm.
instead of initially you got a feeling of alarm, but instead of
Hmm.
calming down so you can do a good job of figuring out what's going on, you stay alarmed until the
Hmm.
stress hormones burn off. And that's what you can do with the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You can do it until the
Hmm.
stress hormones burn off.
Hmm.
But what we find is, if we can instead, or in addition, one or the other, if we can bring in that automatic response to alarm, oh, mom's face, voice, and touch. Only now it
Hmm.
would be somebody in your adult life, a friend who's easy to go get along with. That you link that person's safety signals on their face, in their voice, and in their body language to
Hmm.
being on the plane. Then those things that happen as they happen on the plane, just you don't have to wait for the stress hormones to burn off. You just immediately go from alarm to calm, so
Hmm.
that you can say, well, I heard this noise, but so what? Or the
Hmm.
plane dropped, so what?
Hmm. Yeah. I uh, I I felt that, for example, in the second flight that was rebooked for the next day, and when the first flight was canceled because of the mechanical issues, my daughter and I, we walked on the plane, and I'll call it a dashboard, was completely removed, and you could see all the wires on the
Yeah, that
back,
doesn't
and I
help
was
much.
like,
Yeah.
man, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't think I should be on this plane. If that would have even been a month or before, but especially when it was at its worst, probably about 5 years before that, there's no way I would have even boarded the flight. And so I sat there um, and I did the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I looked at the pictures that I had on my phone, and I continued to tell myself, or ask myself, like, are you really doing this? And it was fine. We
Yeah.
ended up not taking off, but for that flight, that was about a year
But
and
you
a
were
half
ready to
ago.
go. Yeah. But you were
Yeah,
ready to go.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Good.
This has been, but you know, how helpful has this been to me? The program, that is, and some of the exercises. It's not just helped me out with flying; it's helped me out in other areas of my life as
Yeah.
well.
You mentioned that. Tell me about that.
You know, um, I think that there's always there's always this there's things that can make us a little upset, and it's all relative to the individual. And I use the word upset, and that might not even be the right word, but it's the best word that I can think of right now. And so when anytime I encounter an issue where if I have the presence of mind to think about the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, it absolutely relaxes me. And so what I have noticed, and again, I tie 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and thinking of an individual in my life that does relax
Mm-hmm.
me. I do this daily.
Yeah.
And what I have found, and I tie it into meditation. So what I have found is that, you know, it's easy to get distracted. It's a challenge to strengthen your mind with this method where you're totally focused on the present and you are not thinking about, what you got to done that day and all the different errands you have to run and all the responsibilities that you need to get taken care of. Truly, it's when you need it most, when you least expect it. I'm not sure if that makes sense. And so it's, for example, when I'm sitting in the airport now, I find a sense of peace and calm. If I'm sitting in traffic, it's the same. When I'm dealing with, clients
Yeah,
and customers.
when you do meditation and actually there's two forms of it. One kind of meditation is escape, where you go
Mhm.
into meditation, you just say the same word again and again and again and again.
Mm.
That's a form of escape. I I know it's practiced. I know people swear by it, but I
Mhm.
think psychologically it's not sound.
Mhm.
What you're doing is you're using meditation to accept whatever comes in your mind.
Absolutely. You're 100% correct. Yeah. And to deal with it constructively, unemotionally, and with mental strength, psychological strength, to the point to where you don't have an emotional response to it. And whether or not that's, um,
Well, you
uh,
don't
per-
you don't have an emotional response that gets in the way of being able to
right.
examine the situation and figure what you should do about it.
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
You
That's,
you you this is an important thing. You get enough of an emotional response to grab your attention.
mhm.
See, for example, sometimes I use this. Let's say you're up on a ladder and you're painting the ceiling with a roller, and you're in the middle of the ceiling, no problem. You don't have to concentrate that much, but you get
Mhm.
over toward the wall and you don't want to brush the roller against the wall, so you're really trying to focus on it and get it just right.
Right. Right.
That's a lot of focus. Now,
Well put.
and then suppose you lost your balance and
Uh-huh.
you started to fall. You don't stay focused on that roller and the wall.
Right.
Immediately, when the stress hormones hit you, it grabs you and forces
Uh-huh.
you to forget about the painting, and
Uh-huh.
you're headed toward the floor. Now, that's
Uh-huh.
great. That's what the amygdala is supposed to do. So, when something happens that could be a risk, now the
Mhm.
amygdala's primitive kind of thing. It's
Mhm.
not really good at knowing what's safe and unsafe,
Mhm.
but it responds to change. It also
Mhm.
responds to the feeling of dropping or falling off a ladder. Oh yeah, by the way, it reacts genetically to S-shaped things on the ground. Could be a snake, could be a vine, but you could be walking through the woods and suddenly
Mhm.
freeze in your tracks and not know why. Here's why you don't know why. The retina of the eye, the information splits and goes to the conscious part of the brain after it's been processed to
Mhm.
become a picture. But there's a quicker route that goes directly to the amygdala, and it takes a tenth of a second for the image to show up in your brain to see the snake. But the amygdala can react to that S-shaped thing on the ground in 18 thousandths of a second, give you a
Mm.
blast of stress hormones to make you freeze.
Uh-huh.
Now you look down and you see that snake. You say, "Man, am I smart?" On the other hand, you look down and you see a vine. You say, "Like I'm stupid for doing that." But
Right.
no, that's the way it's supposed to react. And so,
Uh-huh.
yeah, when that your amygdala senses change or something unexpected, it's going to zap you enough to get you to pay
Mhm.
attention, and then you quiet down. You're doing it because you've built in an ability to go from that state of alertness, alarm, or whatever you want to call it. You had a word
Mhm.
for it, upset, but just
Mhm.
something that gets you gets tension and makes you
Mhm.
forget about what you're focused on. And okay, what's the amygdala responding to? And
Mhm.
then you're then cool, calm, and collected enough to say, "Oh, that's a false alarm," or "Oh
Mhm.
yeah, I need to do something about that. Now, what can I
Mhm.
do?" And it makes a huge difference when you start deciding what you need to do if you're
Mhm.
cool, calm, and collected versus upset.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I
100%
think that's
agree.
what you're finding by doing meditation. You're expanding your ability to let things come into your mind,
Yeah.
not necessarily
And
from outside, but also from inside. A lot of us have trouble, serious
uh-huh.
trouble with we don't like what's inside us. We don't like our thoughts. We've got some idea, I shouldn't think that, I shouldn't feel that, that's
Oh
sinful or
yeah.
whatever. And we need to become able to accept whatever's there.
And for me, it was specific. One thing was specific to flying. It was to the point to where I noticed how my um, my thoughts and feelings relative to flying were impacting other areas of my life in a way that I did not like. And and I know I needed to get control over what's been one of the most challenging things for me to get control over, which is this. I've always considered myself a mentally strong, a mentally tough individual.
Well,
And so,
you talk about mental toughness, but tell me a little bit about your martial arts stuff. I'm impressed.
yeah, and that was the other thing as well, is how I've even for so I don't call what the feeling that I get mentally before I compete. I compete and I teach Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I've been training for nearly 20 years, and I own my own school. And the goal actually is to travel the world and to compete. And I've not done that, but I've started to travel the country, and I'm not all parts of the country, but that's coming. And so you get a little anxiousness before you go on the mat, and I've come to realize that that's actually
Yes,
a
helpful.
completely normal response. I think it's like physiological readiness.
Yeah, when you get a shot of stress hormones, see, normally the blood supply is going to your gut and digesting food. But when you get some stress hormones, it reroutes that energy supply, that blood supply going to the gut and sends it to your muscles. So you actually need some adrenaline pumping to do your best
Hmm.
job of running or fighting or doing competition.
Hmm. Yeah.
And look, I just
Help.
wanted to say, I know you're being modest, but I'd just like for you to mention some of the things you've accomplished in competition.
That's very nice of you. I I'm a 25-time International Brazilian Jiu Jitsu Federation medalist, and um, I've medaled in. I've gotten gold in the New York Pro, and I'm going to be competing in about a week and a half in New York. This will be the biggest tournament I've ever done.
Yeah,
It's the Nogi Pan Am Championship. That'll be a big deal for me, but I feel, despite the unknown and my first, or I would say, excuse me, not my first. This is definitely the biggest challenge that I've had since I've been competing. I feel so ready for it, and
good. Yeah,
yeah. But again, it's why I feel ready for it isn't specific or 100% because of the training that I do on the mat, as much as it is about the training that I do mentally
totally.
with this 5-4-3-2-1. So I'll use 5-4-3-2-1 before I go on the mat as well.
To
It's been
clear your
huge.
mind of
Yeah,
other stuff so that you
absolutely.
can just focus on, let's get the job done.
Just get the job done and focus on. And what that's enabled me to do too is, with 5-4-3-2-1, and you're using your senses, is rather than, for me, this is how I've what it's done for me personally, is then it makes me focus on process rather than outcome
You're
relative to my
reminding me of
competition.
something, and you may know exactly what it is, but there's something in Asian um, martial arts about no
Hmm.
mind. That
Hmm.
what kind of mental attitude should you have in competition? Like, I'm going to
Hmm.
win. I'm going to go and do the job.
Right.
Supposedly the ideal is no thought, no mind.
Right. And your expectation is, um, if of course it's to do your best. That's what everybody says, and that's what everybody wants to do. But really, what everybody wants to do is win. Everybody wants a gold medal. Everybody wants to get on the podium. But that can be, you don't have 100% control over that. So for me, and actually this was my main motivation to compete, was to get more control over my mind and make myself focus on the process and be as present moment as I possibly could. And
So
I
instead
knew that
of
that would help
instead
me.
and in the middle of the competition, you don't think, "Oh my goodness, what if I lose? I'm going to
Oh
feel like,"
yeah.
just no,
It,
that's
and
not
it's
going to help.
and you know what? I mean, of course, yeah. I mean, especially I think as Americans, like, we are so wired to win at everything that we do. I've coached collegiate athletics, and I've coached um, athletes from different countries, And I really believe that in my interaction with not just my own athletes, and then of course with my own personal experiences, but athletes from other countries, how much we want to win. And everybody does, but I don't know if they want to do it like us, because that's all we talk about. But in actuality, a lot of what I have achieved has been because of um, the opposite, the overcoming the challenges of losses, for example. And I will tell you this is the fear of flying that I've had. In all honesty, it has been one of the best things that's ever happened to me. And that's so odd to say, I know, but I've met some tremendous people like yourself, among many others, because of this. It would have been something that I would have, relationships that I would never formed had it not been for this. I'm actually really thankful and appreciative of it.
Well, you're also reminding me of something that I ran across in psychology, to kind of introduce it. When I was younger, uh, I was distressed by the conflict I felt.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kept thinking that if I could just be of one mind and not have conflict, that I would, that would be peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually admired people who just did whatever came in their mind.
Yeah, I know.
And
Right.
it looked like that spontaneousness was something good, but I know it got them in trouble a lot of times.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Years later, um, a friend who's a psychoanalyst had shot some video of a guy in New York who is considered like the head, or well, he's no longer alive, but he was the head guy in the psychoanalytic community there.
Uh-huh.
And what he said was that we psychoanalysis does not cure conflict. He says
Mm-hmm.
we are supposed to have conflict.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that we're supposed to do about conflict is be able to see both sides of it, or all three sides of it, or all five
Mm-hmm.
sides of it, so
Mm-hmm.
that we can bring it into the mind
Mm-hmm.
and make some choice about how to make an adjustment so that the various aspects of oneself, say one part of me wants to do this, another part of me wants to do that. Well,
Right.
how can I work it out so that both parts of me can go with this compromise, rather than first do one and then switch to the other and then switch back to this. And so anyway, what you were saying reminded me of what this psychoanalyst was saying. I believe his name was
Mm-hmm.
Arlo. Anyway, does that? I was wondering if that rings a bell.
Oh, 100%. So I'm gonna I'll go at this at an angle, a little different than what you just said, but it's the same thing. So the indecisiveness that surrounded planning a trip, making a decision relative to anything, traveling and flying, it was exhausting. It was so
Mm,
exhausting. And so, now to sort of make decisions based on what, like, happiness being the outcome and convenience being the outcome, is part of what you're talking about too. Is now, rather than just being controlled by the emotions, is the emotions are actually still there, but I'm controlling it now. I honestly, I feel like they're kind of always going to be there. We fly out next Friday, and probably even a couple days before, I'll be a little edgy. Um, Other things in my life I'm now aware of, um, because of this, and really because of how you explain things. I will now see that, oh, I'm edgy because I'm about to take a trip. I'm a little sensitive to that. Where I
but
thought,
that's part of your process, and you're just
right,
letting it be there instead
and
of
I
trying
thought,
to say I've got to get rid of that edginess if I'm going to fly.
oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Because I
Like,
hear this all the time, that people think that I've got to get rid of these thoughts.
uh-huh,
I've got to get rid of these feelings, because if I
hmm,
have these feelings, I can't do it. And what you're saying is, I believe what we're both saying is that if you can allow yourself to have the thought and have the feeling and go ahead and do what your
oh
intent
yeah.
is to do,
Um,
is the answer.
yeah, in realizing that it's okay, it's okay. And it's actually, what I thought of before is, like, here I am in this part of my life that is, not scared, very strong, very courageous. And then I have this other aspect that is absolutely polar opposite, and just realizing, like, what, it doesn't have to be a bad thing, you know
Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, So going back to the point that you were making regarding conflict is being at peace with some of the things about your personality that are weak, and not trying to eliminate them, but just trying to make things in your
Yeah,
life a little
yeah.
stronger,
And the
you
point
know?
is that the point is, I think we're both saying here, is the ability for you to be aware of the weakness makes you stronger.
Yes. Yes. Rather than letting my ego get in the way of it and saying, this isn't me, it shouldn't be here, and
Exactly.
it needs to disappear. Because that is not reality at all. And, again, I mentioned this right before we got on. My motivation for wanting to speak with you today and have this opportunity is because I know that there are so many other people out there that that are not living their life to their full potential and not making choices based on happiness, and they're making choices based on fear, and I hope that this is something that they could use to help them.
Well,
um,
yeah, you reminded me of something that an email I got the other day,
mhm,
but it's an old subject. And the
mhm,
person said they became aware as they were planning their flight, thinking, I may die. This may be the
mhm,
last flight. This may be the last time I ever get on a plane. And the person
mhm,
emailed, have you ever had a thought like that? And I emailed
mhm.
back, I used to fly fighters in the Air Force. Every flight I had that feeling. In
Uh-huh,
fact, I
uh-huh.
went into some detail about it. In a fighter, the last thing you do before you walk out to the airplane is you go by the latrine and urinate. And so, literally, every time I did this, I would have the thought, this may be the last time you ever do this. And yet you say, okay, and that's one of the things you are aware of. And so, what my client who sent the email had the view was, if she has this thought, she won't be able to fly. And what you and I are
Mhm.
saying, oh, that's just another thing you put in the sauce.
You made me think of something. So from 2001 uh, up until I would say 2018. But I've taken some flights after, from 2018 to present, and I guess it would have been one or two. I can't remember exactly, but anyway, I would take some prescription medication to
Uh-huh.
just sort of relax a little bit and to get it done. And as I mentioned earlier, last July is the first time since 2001 that I did not take any medication at all to fly, and I relied solely on your exercises. Um, every single flight that I took from 2001 up until about 2018, I literally, talk about irrational. I could not look past the the um, the trip, the flight. Life is was over as far as I was concerned. And that's, I don't feel that would have been tough for me to maybe admit a year or two
Uh-huh.
ago.
Uh-huh.
That's not hard for me to admit now. As irrational as that was, but everything centered around our fear of flying is irrational for the
Well,
most part.
kind of. There's an interesting thing. There's a guy in England, Peter Fonagy, who's done some pretty amazing stuff in psychological theory, and he has
Hmm.
this term, psychic equivalence. Psyche, that's the mind, and
Hmm.
equivalent, well, that's what that is. That's things are equal. And so, what psychic equivalence means is that what you have in your mind is considered by you, without even examining it. What's in my mind is reality. Period. That's it.
Hmm.
Well,
Hmm.
this is the state that a child is in for the first 3 years of their life. They believe that, or act as if everything in their mind and reality are one. Um, Apparently, they don't believe anything exists except what's in their mind, and what's in their mind is exactly what exists in the world. Well, at around 3, they suddenly make this discovery. Oh my goodness, something could be in my mind that's not really there. And so
Hmm.
they learn to imagine. Well, this gives them some freedom. And how is it they learn that they can have something in their mind that's not true? Reflective
Hmm.
function. That is, at around the age of 3, we begin to be able to look inward at our thought processes and say, oh,
Hmm.
what's in there actually comes from outside. And it
Mm-hmm.
could be an accurate, I mean, it's pretty precocious 3-year-old. This is what it could be accurate, what I have in my mind, or it could be my imagination. But
Uh-huh.
then how do I know which it is? Well, okay, I can kind of tell. For
Mm-hmm.
example, as we sit here right now, the back, I can see the window here and I can
Mm-hmm.
see there's green leaves on the trees.
Mm-hmm.
That's perception. But if
Mm-hmm.
I go to memory, I can go back to last December and say, gee, you know, it's nothing there but just brown branches, no
Mm-hmm.
leaves.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Mm-hmm.
memory. I can tell the difference, right? You can tell the difference. Okay, what about imagination? What if I said, those green leaves are okay, but what if I just, well, maybe I could make them purple. Well,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I could do that, require a little effort, but I could imagine purple leaves. Now, but I would be aware that I'm doing it. So
Yeah.
what happens when you say, okay, I'm going to take a flight, and you think, oh my goodness, the flight could crash. Instead of being able
Oh
to
yeah.
just put that in the sauce, instead of just putting that in the sauce, you say, oh no, I can't deal with this sauce. You know,
Yeah.
I gotta stop. I gotta stop that thought. Otherwise, I can't do it. Well,
Mm-hmm.
when you start having this stress, you stop doing reflective function.
Mm-hmm.
And when you stop doing reflective function, you can't tell the difference between what you're imagining and what you're perceiving. And so now,
And
as you are stressed and you're imagining your plane's going to crash, it becomes equivalent to reality. I'm
uh-huh.
you are imagining the plane's going to, because you're
Mm-hmm.
not even on a plane, but you're imagining
Mm-hmm.
your plane's going to crash and becomes your reality. And so you know then that's going to be it. I've got no life after
Mm-hmm.
that. That's just what you're talking about. So although it may seem
100%.
crazy, it may seem crazy, but it makes perfect sense that when we get stressed enough, we can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imaginary.
And again, this is for your viewers, your clients, and anyone at all that is considering the program. I got to a point, sort of to piggyback on what you just said, that my rumination and perseveration relative to flying started to carry over into other areas of my life, as I mentioned before. So, for example, if I would take a road trip with my wife and children,
Hmm.
I started getting a little anxious then. Never had those problems before. Never. Then it would get even more specific than that. I felt like I'd get a little nervous going over bridges. And then I was like, you know what? I never had that issue before. All of that came from, I took one aspect of something and just thought about it and overthought about it. So, in using my imagination and talking about things that were not reality and building them up so much that it was affecting other areas of my life in a way that I knew I needed to change.
Well,
It's very freeing.
one of the things that puzzles people is sometimes they start having fear of flying for no reason that they can come up with. You know, some people
Yeah.
have a bad flight. Some people just say it just happened.
Uh-huh.
According to our research, the average age that this hits is 27. And when it happens for
Yeah.
no apparent reason, I think it's progress in a way. When you're a
Uh-huh.
teenager and you go out for the evening and your mom says, be careful, you think she's from some other planet. What
Yeah.
is she talking about? What could go wrong? Then you get out into your 20s, you get out into the world, it gets a little bit more complicated, but you think, I've got control. But as you get a little older, apparently around 27,
Yeah.
you become aware, oh my goodness, I death, when I was 16, that was so far away, I couldn't even think about it. But now I'm starting to
Hmm.
realize that maybe I am, well, maybe I'm going to die. Yeah, I guess well, everybody says you die. I don't know, but
Sure.
it begins to be something that sort of sits in your
Yeah.
awareness. And then you
Yes.
become sort of maybe even obsessed about how do I keep that from happening now? I mean, it could happen. I mean, I guess it's going to happen when I get old enough, but what about
Uh-huh.
now? I have to control things. And
Hmm.
then you say, well, okay, I can control this and control this, but I can't control everything. Now what?
Hmm. Hmm.
Then I need escape. So
Hmm.
So here you are, as crazy as it sounds, on a bridge.
Hmm.
How do you
I
escape?
remember the day. Yeah, I
How
remember
do
the
you
day.
escape? How do I get off this bridge right now? So you
Hmm.
get into this situation where any place where you can't escape, that can bring on anxiety, maybe even a panic attack. You remember I mentioned that
Yeah.
psychoanalyst friend who had this video of Arlo.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, I used to go to movies in New York with her, and we would go into the movie theater, and she would look for a seat on the end.
Hmm.
And if the movie theater was full and there was no end seat, we'd leave.
Hmm.
Wasn't my idea, but she couldn't handle the idea that she couldn't have an end seat because if she got anxious, I mean, this person is a
Hmm.
psychoanalyst. If she got anxious, she had to be able to get out right now. And she knew
Hmm.
if she couldn't get out right now, she could start having
Hmm.
a panic attack. So here you are on the bridge, and I need control. If I don't have control, I need escape.
And so, you telling the story that you just told about your friend, the other piece to my anxiousness with flying is why I'm thankful for it is it has made me more compassionate towards people that are struggling from things that I have absolutely no clue about, and
Yeah.
that's why I wanted to do this too, because I know that this conversation will resonate with someone out there. So you mentioned the average age being 27. My daughter was born when I was 26. So what you mentioned, specific to the thoughts that go through our mind when we're in our mid to late 20s, about, hey, I could die. Mine actually was when my first child was born, as I mentioned, and I then was thinking, well, hey, if I die, I have a responsibility now. Those were the
Yes,
kind of thoughts
it's
that I
not just me. It's not just
had. Hmm.
me. What would my child feel? And
Yeah.
then how would my child be taken care of? Both those things are
Yes.
big
That
deal.
was where it all came from, and literally because of the manifestation of these thoughts, they just I would literally just, and so my job actually entailed traveling as a collegiate coach. I'm having to take student athletes on trips in vans and buses, and then we'd have to fly too. And it was, I never, I do have a regret, which is, but I can't change it. It's a part of who I am now, and I just use it as motivation. Um, is I never took advantage of the opportunities that I had, not only for myself, but with my student athletes, to have really cool experiences when we would travel to some cool cities. I would always try to get there and get back as quickly as possible.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
yeah. Well, when you can allow yourself to look and see what's inside and feel relatively at peace about it, which is
Hmm.
what you're doing through meditation, and you can have a built-in program so that you have a moment of alarm when the amygdala does its thing, but then don't have to wait for it to just stress hormones burn off. You have something
Hmm.
that'll calm you down.
Hmm.
Then it sure makes a big difference in your life.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been great.
I just want to mention, the new book on panic free
Uh-huh.
is,
Uh-huh.
I with fear of flying, one of the main things that people have to deal with is the idea of having a panic attack on the plane.
Hmm.
And initially at Pan Am, we tried breathing exercises. It just did not do the job. We had people on what we call the graduation flight doing their breathing exercises, and just exactly like we taught them, and having a full-blown panic attack. It was a nasty
Hmm.
looking scene, and it was
Hmm.
really uncomfortable to feel like, here we told these people that they get on the plane, they're going to be okay, and they're having a
Hmm.
panic attack doing exactly what we told them. That was not good.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I broke off from that program and set up SOAR to try to develop something that would work. And I thought cognitive therapy was going to be the answer, because this is back in the 80s and this was fairly new. Tried cognitive, didn't work too
Hmm.
well. Worked for some
Hmm.
people, but most people it didn't work with panic. So I kept modifying it to try to make it work, and it went on for years, probably 7 or 8, 9 years doing it. And finally just happened to stumble on something that actually was working sometimes, and then fine-tune it a little bit. And at this point, it's working virtually 100%.
Hmm.
So, meanwhile, I kind of thought that CBT was working okay for panic on the ground, but I took a look at the research, and sure enough, it turns out that only 16% of people who are treated with CBT become panic free. I thought, geez, we're getting
Hmm.
80, 90, almost 100%, it depends on how
Yeah.
much work I do with the client, to fix it on the airplane, and which is a very difficult situation. It should be a piece of cake to fix it on the
Right.
ground. So that's
Yeah.
why I wrote the book. And so now the challenge is how to get the word out that people don't have to suffer from panic.
Hmm.
It can be fixed.
Yeah.
And some of the process that you've gone through, um, is what a person needs to do. Not
Hmm.
say, I can't have that thought, I'm in trouble. I can't
Right.
I can't be in a situation where I don't have immediate escape, or I'm in trouble.
Hmm. Hmm.
I can't be in a situation where I'm not in control, or I'm in trouble.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
more like going into that meditative state and being able
Yeah.
to accept whatever comes in.
Acceptance. And I almost felt when I said that, I almost maybe even sounded a little cheesy or overused, but that is just the truth, is getting to a point to where it's not trying to eliminate it, because you're not going to eliminate it. It's not going anywhere. It's just dealing with it, you
Well,
know?
there is acceptance. There's a therapy that uses that in its title, and yes, if you can accept, that's good. But the question is, how do you do that? And I think
Hmm.
to reach that point of acceptance, you have to have something that's going to tone down that feeling of alarm that you get when the amygdala fires off, so that you
Hmm.
can become cool, calm, and collected.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, it's been wonderful for me. It's been great. I
Okay.
mean, anytime that you've you've overcome something that's been a tremendous challenge. It's a great feeling.
Well, okay. Are there any last thoughts? We talk about last thoughts before you're
Sure.
going to die. Last thoughts before we shut off the video today. Anything you
Yeah. That you got to exercise patience when you do this. Especially what most people are going to do, just like me, is they're going to wait until they are tense to practice, and that you can't do it. Well, I mean, you can try, but the success rate if you try to do it without having prior practice is pretty low.
well,
So
that's what we call unconscious procedural memory. See, when you get
hmm.
stressed, your ability to say, "Here's what I need to do," that goes
Hmm.
south on you.
Hmm.
Um, you need to practice this, so you build it in, and so it'll work by itself. And it reminds me again, I'm sure that when you're doing martial arts competition, that you're depending on your training.
Yeah,
You're,
especially
you're,
with my
you're
sport, things happen so quickly, and so just again, being in a present state of mind to the point to where you're just kind of you're taking it as it comes, and making adjustments as things unfold is so much better than getting into that state of mind of, oh my gosh, I didn't think this was going to happen. I'm going to lose now. All right, I'm in a really bad position. Oh man, well, I thought I was going to get on the podium today, and thinking about all these things that are not helping you at all.
and the thing, sometimes I say, well, how is it that people who work in an emergency room, or firefighters, and policemen, people who do these really high stress jobs, how they perform? Because when you're stressed, you don't
Yeah,
think very well. It's practice. And
right. It is.
it's sometimes said that we don't rise to the occasion, we descend to the level of our training. So my guess is
Uh,
that when you're in competition, what you're really relying on is those hours and hours and hours and hours of practice
hmm. Yeah,
to do the
and
job for
and and again, the practice, of course, is the repetition on the mat,
you.
and relative to technique, but it's also the visualization, the meditation, and the things that I do, and how even using the exercises from the SOAR program have helped me develop a you know better psychological awareness and mental toughness.
And that mental toughness has a lot to do with acceptance of
Mm-hmm.
whatever
Mm-hmm.
is
Yeah,
you're aware of right now.
absolutely. Yeah. And being okay with it.
Yeah, exactly. That's an interesting definition of strength. You know?
It took, I'm in my early 40s. I wish that, I wish maybe I would have figured that out about 10 years ago, but it's happening now for a reason, and I'm at peace with that. So it's as long as I'm in a position to make progress moving forward, it's great. And I've made a lot of progress, actually. I've made a lot of progress. It's
Yeah,
great.
and I wish you the best progress when you get to New York in this competition.
Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna need it.
All right.
Yeah, I'll have my hands full for sure.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing
Thank
all
you.
this great experience
Yeah,
with us.
yeah.
All
Thank you so
right.
much. I appreciate everything. Thank you for the program.
Thank you for being here.
All right. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks.